you okay wherever you are? It's lunchtime. I know it's time to relax and have some great time. Taking us to 9 minutes past the hour, 1 o'clock. You know, at this time, I'm not alone. I'm with my lady, Lissetti. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm good, man. Happy that we are back again on this week and killing this again. What's happening? What are you having today on this second hour of the show?
So we are back again with our current affairs. This is where we talk about news, politics, culture, society, and more. And today we are continuing our conversation about gentrification.
Yeah.
But I'm actually very excited for today's conversation because we will be focusing on a gentrification project called Artwashing Juxtaposed that is led by Prof. Donaldson, and we have him in studio today.
The origins of Stellenbosch, South Africa's second oldest colonial town, date back to 1679. Until just a decade ago, Stellenbosch was still considered a small university town. Today, however, it is classified as one of the country's 23 secondary cities and is also the most segregated. Despite the breathtaking beauty of the town and region, political scientist Pieter Fourie suggests that something insidious, something atavistic is at play, something that runs deeper than the evident class differences, racial divides, and social strictures. Stellenbosch is a city of stark contrasts. It boasts abundant affluence, idyllic natural scenery, historic architecture, a world-renowned wine-producing region, and a vibrant student community. In 2024, its university was ranked amongst the top 25 most beautiful campuses in the world. Yet beneath all this beauty and opulence lies a stark reality of abject poverty and insufficient infrastructure in some of the previously marginalized areas. Stellenbosch has grown into a small city bursting at the seams, with rural villages located in the shadow of the town, increasingly bearing the brunt of the town's expansion as development extends into these communities through development-led gentrification.
For the past 15 years, I've been monitoring the socio-spatial changes and developments taking place in the four historical hamlets of Kylemore, Pniel, Raithby and Jamestown, all located within the Stellenbosch municipal area. It has become evident to me that development-led gentrification is gradually dismantling and destroying these communities. These villages, all established with strong religious foundations and rich in cultural history and intangible living heritage, share connections to freed slaves. However, I realized that these long-standing communities might not be fully aware of the devastating impacts that gentrification can have on them. Many studies on gentrification are usually conducted after significant changes have occurred. In our case, we observed that, with the exception of Jamestown, the other villages are fortunately in the early stages of gentrification. Since 2021, with the financial support of the National Research Foundation, I initiated a project to raise awareness about gentrification in these villages. But we targeted not only the four affected communities, but also integrated this topic into the geography, the drama and the visual arts curriculum, sensitizing our students, our future leaders of tomorrow, about gentrification and how it can be managed. Additionally, we aimed to spread the message to the broader Stellenbosch public, the municipality and the mayor, to whom we provided a policy guideline document. Artists and creative spaces are often key drivers of gentrification, a process sometimes labeled as artwashing, which carries negative connotations.
The link between art and gentrification has been a neglected aspect of gentrification scholarship, as it emerged that art can be used as a conspicuous tool to appropriate and aestheticize markets of urban decay, as developers use artists as a form of regenerative detergent. This process is called artwashing, and it is described as a classic profit-driven regeneration maneuver in which artists and creative workers are used as tools for reshaping areas of decay into places of transformation.
However, there's also a positive aspect to art washing, where art is used constructively to divert attention from or legitimize negative actions associated with gentrification. Hence, Artwashing Juxtaposed. Central to our awareness campaign were various forms of art. In our multidisciplinary awareness project, we explored this concept alongside land art by world-renowned Stellenbosch-based land artist Reno van der Merwe, artworks by Stellenbosch University Visual Arts students, performances by drama students, and then this documentary film. While these artworks might be considered a form of art washing, they deviate from the negative stereotype. Rather than promoting gentrification, they focus on raising awareness among residents in the 4 villages and hopefully the policymakers. A typical lecturer asks you, what do you know about gentrification?
Well, last week we actually spoke about it and we tried to learn as much as we can. So we learned that, gentrification is when, in a sense, people move into areas and they start, now I'm explaining it very terribly, but they start developing in these areas, but the way that they develop, it ends up that the people who lived there before can no longer afford to live there.
Yeah, you're spot on.
It was an uphill battle. You can't beat these damn developers. They get in one way or the other.
Look at the mountains. Those houses there on the mountains are coming nearer to us. In the end, they will squeeze us in here. They will squeeze us, and that is what we are scared of. Because we see it coming that way. We are scared of that they will squeeze us, taking up all the space. Taking up, like I said, they're taking up our oxygen.
Wat ek eintlik sien wat aankom. Hulle wil al die ontwikkelinge daar hier meedoen dat ons moet uit. Dan hulle die Raithby sou wou eien.
Met al die goedkeurings wat nou plaasgevind het en wat nog kom, dit is ongelukkig waar ons op pad is.
And now we have this problem that you guys are trying to focus on how they are buying up the land that your ancestors got for free. You're selling it off.
Dan is dit byvoorbeeld die plase, die ryk mense rondom ons doen net wat hulle wil. En ek dink dit is maar basies dieselfde soos Raithby sê, hulle wil ons dorpie soort van inneem. En ek dink hulle wil dit natuurlik vir hulle self eien.
Dieselfde mense wat apartheid beoefen het, beskerm het, wat verwys was na criminals van die United Nations gesê, apartheid is a crime against humanity. So hulle gaan nog voort met die criminality, want gentrification in my opinie is crimineel.
So that is how Pniel started in 1849.
1943, it used to be a mission station. There was land donated, and the first thing they said they have to build a church and a school for the slaves also to be educated.
Ja, omdat ons van 'n sendingstasie afkomstig is, ons was grootgemaak in die leringe van die Bybel en hier was altyd net een kerk. So ons het almal die kerk, ons is grootgemaak in die kerk.
No liquor, alcohol, wine to be sold in this town. None.
Byvoorbeeld, dit is 'n soort van toegang wat al jare aan ons voorouers gegee was. Die toegang moet behou word vir mense soos ons in Pniel byvoorbeeld wat die berg wil gaan klim.
Ons probeer baie hard om die geskiedenis te behou en na te vors en te kort en opnames te neem en so. Van ons ou mense sterf nou uit wat die geskiedenis geken het.
Wanneer ons terugkyk en weer 'n senior wat u vir hierdie mense van Raithby gedoen het. Ons wil vir u baie dankie sê dat u altyd hier daar was vir hulle.
Here for 6 years, it's a unique community, and every detail of your history, you should celebrate it, no matter how small it is.
Hierdie boek, soos jy sê, baie moeite, baie tyd, maar as jy moeite werd, een stapje op een Raithby is voorpad. Je begint aan onderhoud met zo'n kunnen wil brengen. Je groet, die mensen zitten op je stoep en praten met je. Je groet, hallo auntie, hallo uncle. Als je afgaat, dan groet je weer. Als je terugkomt, 10 minuten later, je groet weer. En bewaar je ziel als je niet groet.
Well, the missionary gave the freed slaves allotments so that they can grow vegetables and fruit there. We were living on church land, so they were not the owners. You know, the owner is the person who owns the land. So that's why in 1985, I started the subdivision of the plots in Raithby. We call it F100 Raithby because there are 100 subdivisions. And I put a park in the middle, and we've got the original erven at the bottom with the land attached to it, where we grew particularly strawberries. It took me 5 years to subdivide the land. So we passed land to the people, and Raithby has now become the village is now, and is under attack, as he would tell you, because of gentrification. I tried to stop the sale of land to outside people. So I wrote into the deeds of sale a few clauses. The first one is no liquor outlets allowed here. And the second one is if you sell your land, because I was scared people would sell, you know. People are interested in these small places. And I tried to put a break on it, so if they sell their land, the church will have the first option to buy. But of course it'll have to be at market prices because according to the law, you know, you can't stop people from selling their property. Unfortunately, as you discovered when you started your project, people have been after the area around Raithby. So we've had 3 subdivisions of about 17 plots.
Yes, we are. We are a very poor community, but we are rich in nature surroundings. And this nature surroundings is, as a matter of fact, inviting the rich developers to our small community, which is making this community very, very angry. Because if we benefit from whatever development is taking place, then it will be okay. It will be okay with everyone. But we are not benefiting. But besides not benefiting, is that they are claiming the land that belonged to our forefathers. And that is making this community very, 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 very angry. If we look at your prices, these prices won't even fit the pockets of the kids that are lawyers in our community, that are teachers in our community. And your prices won't even fit them. So we have then asked them for whom is it then? You're building our community. This is our community. For whom will it then benefit? It won't benefit us. Ek, Ronnie, is woonagtig in Swartstraat. Kylemore is langs aan my. Toe Kylemore daar begin bou, het hulle die son en die maan en die sterre vir die gemeenskap van Kylemore beloof. As jy soggens Kylemore, as jy staan by die onderpunt van Swartstraat, jy kom Kylemore in, dan kan jy sien hoeveel taxis laai hoeveel mense daar af om daar binne te kom werk. Hulle bring voete van buite af om daai rand en sent wat Kylemore kon gebruik uit te dra uit Kylemore uit. As geen weerskeping vir ons mense nie. That is what Stellenbosch municipality is doing. I'm saying to you now, honestly, they just do things. They come in certain areas, they just do things, and that certain area is one of our areas. They just do things, and then you are surprised to see what's going on. And when you go there, then they say, it is a council decision. We took a decision in council.
Eienaars van die grond is nou 5 generasies. Van die mense natuurlik verkoop en verhandel, maar dit is wat Jamestown anders maak. En dit is ook wat onder gentrification, wat nou onder druk is, want dit is die fabriek van die community, dit is die samesyn van kerkbazaar, dit is die arbeidsfees, die verbouing van die grond, die landbougrond, die waardes binne die skole, al daai goed het onder druk gekom. So 'n ou Jamestown is 'n romantic notion. Die dorpskarakter waarvoor mense hunker na is daai samesyn. Waar jy nie straat afgaan en jy lig jou hand en jy groet. Dit is nog onder van ons mense.
Kom ons fokus op gentrification. Dan vra ek vir mense, weet jy wat beteken gentrification? Is amper jy praat Grieks. Nou sê ek, eenvoudige taal is, dit is wanneer invloedryke of ryk mense grotendeels wit is, identify waar is previously disadvantaged areas met mooi infrastructure, waar Jesus se berg is, 10 is Jesus se rivier ook nog daar langs, en dis perfect, en ons gaan vir ons daar establish, ons gaan vir ons groot huise bou, ons sit vir ons besighede sommige plekke, op die grense kom mole, op die grense kom security estates, maar tot nadeel van die inhabitants, met ander woorde, julle wat hier gebore is tot nadeel van julle. En nou moet jy explain, hoekom is dit tot nadeel?
Die aanslag is op die landbougrond, want dis prime property om te develop. Dit is reeds besig om te gebeur. Ons het alles probeer doen om dit te stop of te vertraag, wat toe nou wyl. Die burgemeester het afgeteken, soos julle weet. En dit's dan. So, my vrees is, vra my hoe lyk Jamestown oor 'n paar jaar, maar net soos enige ander suburb in die land.
Ek was die dosent vir die geïntegreerde kuns- en ontwerpmodule, saam met die tweedejaars waar ons die tema van gentrifikasie in Jamestown ondersoek het. Hierdie projek het oor 4 weke gehandel En die eerste week het ons na Jamestown toe gegaan en geteken en die spasie ondersoek deur middel van teken en om sodoende te kyk hoe lyk die argitektuur, die mense wat daar bly en die omgewing. In week 2 het ons spesifiek met mense gaan onderhoud voer wat in Jamestown bly, spesifiek ook met mense wat besighede het, families wat al baie jare daar bly, maar as ook inkommers en mense wat ook nie in Jamestown kom woon het. Ek dink dit het baie goeie insigte vir studente gegee, spesifiek ook die mense wat al vir generasies daar bly, omdat dit iets van die kultuur en die gees van Jamestown, van die verlede, maar as ook die hede vir hulle kon gee.
Through using photography as a lens to creating work, we did visual research on the history of the town via means of meeting with many of the town leaders and getting their ideas around the history of the town, where the town is going. The students for their 2 weeks went through Jamestown taking photographs, interviewing many of the people in the town, and just basically looking at how to, or what rather are the effects of gentrification and art washing on this long-standing community.
Literature argues that collaborative and participatory art and design practices can create opportunities for collaborative encounters which can enable the evolution of more equitable social impact. The project provided an opportunity for students to apply their creative problem-solving skills in a real-world context. These insights and material were then combined to create work that could educate and create awareness about gentrification in these areas.
Let's talk about the gentrification and what you guys do then as the drama department.
The role we play in the project was to do field work, groundwork, and yes, one of our goals was to have a performance aspect to perform and showcase to stakeholders and important role players, but also to the community itself.
Nice.
Because it was important for us to do, so the fieldwork, it's to make contact with the residents of Kylemore itself and gather information and spread information. It's a long process because we want to establish relationships and we build trust.
So in drama maak ons gebruik, of onder andere sluit dit in die inwin en weergee van inligting. Dis kommunikasie. So in 'n proses, soos hierdie dramaproses, maak ons baie spesifiek gebruik van dramategnieke as deel van kommunikasie, as deel van inligting en skakeling met betrokke rolspelers en die inwoners in die gemeenskap. Dit is dan nou deel van hierdie kreatiewe proses, bepaal dan eintlik hoe die produk gaan uitwerk. Ons het miskien idees waarmee ons ingaan oor ons kan hierdie produk doen of ons gaan so 'n produksie of optrede of opvoering kan doen. Maar tydens die proses is daar beelde en materiaal wat uitkom en woorde wat uiteindelik dan gebruik gaan word in die produk en wat bepaal hoe dit gaan lyk en waarby ons dan ook leef.
But what was it like engaging with those residents?
Well, it's very interesting because you get to see a lot of different point of views, especially with the different generations in the community, in between the residents. It was the film students and the art students and geography students, and we went and we just walked through the town, or Kylemore itself. And with those engagements, it was when we started making our first connections with the residents of Kylemore, because we also, in applied theatre, we approach everything in a very specific ethical way. So we have an ethical view on things that we approach things, and we talk about functioning in the ambiguity and in a heightened awareness. So we're constantly aware of what's going around us, and for us to be that, we need to immerse ourselves within the residents' lives and make contact with them. So it was really interesting making contact and being so surprised actually at first that how keen the residents were to participate.
In addition to helping with the installation of land art constructions and documenting the stories of the village residents, in groups my honours urban geography students were tasked with mapping the spatial growth of the 4 villages resulting from new developments, as well as mapping the increase in property valuation. Students also had to research how some countries and cities elsewhere in the world deal with gentrification through policy.
About 5 years ago, I did research on gentrification related displacement in the inner city of Johannesburg, we had witnessed the devastating impact of gentrification on poor working class residents. Gentrification is sometimes portrayed as a benign process of renovation and rehabilitation that can bring about positive changes to working class areas, such as increased security, improved services, and higher property values. The existing community may at first even welcome the changes taking place in their neighborhoods, but as Newman and Wiley noted, that these, what they term bittersweet fruits, quickly rot when low-income residents start to feel the pressure to move. In the hamlets surrounding Stellenbosch, many of the residents are homeowners, and initially they may not feel threatened by the possibility of their own personal displacement through gentrification. Home ownership, in a way, gives these residents some resilience to the pressures of displacement. However, as gentrification intensifies and brings about changes to the character and the identity of these close-knit communities, these residents may start to experience then what is known as indirect displacement. Over time, as rates and taxes increase due to rising property values, some residents may be forced to move, as they too may find it difficult to adapt to this increasingly expensive environment.
So here in Jamestown is what we'd call rural gentrification. And while it more or less has the same characteristics, you've got affluent people moving into a slightly less affluent area, there's also the issue of village conservation, history, character, those things that you're trying to preserve. And a lot of the time people move to these places, not because it's an economic hub, but because it is idyllic and generally beautiful, and the prices of the properties are generally a lot lower, which is how these changes come to be. What is at risk of happening then is that you lose what makes the town special in the first place, and it becomes another suburb. And what we found in Jamestown is that their lives aren't necessarily being disturbed, in that they're still having the Strawberry Festival, for example, which is attended by people that have moved into the area, the inkommers. Underlying worry that this gentrification that looks like desegregation, where you've got white affluent people moving into a previously historically coloured town, it looks desegregated, and if you bird's eye down on a map and paint every house a different colour depending on what family's living there, it looks like things are changing. But what we have here is desegregation without integration. In many cases, where people move into the area and they don't engage in the community. And in Jamestown, we observed the Stellenbosch Square Mall, La Clemence and Andy Weber, which counted as newer developments. The walls in around the gated communities, where the physical or proverbial was an example of fortification. And that can often fragment a already close-knit society, and that's really what we were trying to study, was the effect, first of all, of these gated communities on the peripheries of these hamlets, and the effect that that had on both property prices and on locals' attitudes and sentiments.
The influx of higher income individuals into an area serves as a pull factor for the establishment of businesses and services catering to these higher income individuals. This often poses a threat to your local small businesses, as these chain stores often lead to their displacement. Within the context of Kylemore, there are currently no chain stores or franchises. However, the influx of higher income individuals could potentially serve as a catalyst for the development of these chain stores, therefore leading to the displacement of the small local businesses.
My animation is called Migrate. At the start of this project, I soon realized that even though I understand the term gentrification, I never had an idea of how intensely it has been impacting areas such as Pniel, Kylemore. So I took a step back and I was looking at topics that I feel a lot of people do understand and can relate to, and that is similar to gentrification. So that's where I came to the topic of deforestation. It's technically the same story. A group comes from outside and makes the place that those who have been living there formerly, they make it inhabitable, or so in my story I decided to take the idea of this bird's house. It's a tree to the people that come in and chop it down, but to him it's his house, this is his place, he's living, and now they just coming here and taking it away. So through the story I want it to be as simple as possible, but I want people to connect to it. So I kept it simple and just show the raw emotion that this bird does feel when his tree's been chopped off. And I feel that relates to the people of Pniel where we did our animation. I feel when we embarked the town and spoke to them, it was the exact same feeling.
What determines our way and our journey? What has transpired in the past to put us on the road where we are now? Strydom often works with what is already found, but then he puts a slant to it. He pushes it just slightly in a different direction, which then transforms the usual into the unusual, the mundane into the extraordinary.
I've got a wonderful friend, Ronnie Donaldson, who introduced me to this term gentrification, which I didn't know about in the past, but I realized that I've been witnessing this whole process all my life, and that there's actually a word for that. And then he came up with the idea that they have to do research about it and try to find a solution. And with that, he came up with the idea about why don't we do an artwork? And why don't we do a land artwork? And land art is exactly about taking artworks out of the gallery space and put it in the landscape. And by doing that, you include the people that walk around the artwork. And that actually, which is wonderful, results in communication. And communication eventually results in to discuss an issue or a problem that exists. So everybody can talk about gentrification. And the reason for putting this artwork is to make people aware of the issues and the problems that we have with that. And I think through this artwork we create communication, also for the outside, but also for the people that live in these areas, and for everybody that don't know that it actually exists. And visually, we live in an age of visual images, and we all know that the visual image is so strong, and through a visual image you can create a discussion and a topic which people can discuss and talk about.
A month-long land art installation was constructed on the periphery of Jamestown adjacent to the Stellenbosch Square Mall. The artist designed 20 small white house structures to symbolize the notions of smallness, sameness, and cohesion within the Jamestown community. As the exhibition progressed, larger red house structures were introduced, and some of the initially white structures were painted red. This artistic transformation vividly illustrated how gentrification spatially impacts the once close-knit community. The changing colors and sizes of the houses served as a visual representation of the shifts and challenges brought about by gentrification in the area. The installation garnered significant attention and was featured in both the local and campus newspapers. Additionally, contact was established with the Jamestown Heritage Community Organization. During a month-long land art exhibition in Raithby, the artist conceptualized the installation of the same White House structures used in the Jamestown exhibition, arranging them in the shape of a kraal. This kraal symbolized gated developments, which are often meant to represent social cohesion. However, the portrayal of cohesion was intentionally socially exclusive, as depicted by red locks, a colour commonly associated with danger that served as barriers, locking out Raithby's long-standing residents. As the installation was being set up, curious residents inquired about its purpose. As a result, the project leader was invited by the Raithby Ratepayers Association to address the community on the concept of gentrification. In Pniel, the land artist incorporated international code flags and red safety warning cones to symbolically represent the warning signs of gentrification to both residents and the municipality. Each of the 4 different code flags conveyed a distinct meaning, symbolizing various forms of resistance against the encroaching effects of gentrification. Similar to Raithby, the installation immediately caught the attention of residents, leading the Pniel Development Forum to urgently request the project leader to address the community on the symbolic meaning of the installation and the issues of gentrification. Concerned community members shared their worries with the project leader at a meeting in the community hall. The idea of a silent protest was then proposed, which subsequently took place on the historic church grounds of Pniel on the 16th of June 2022. In the final land art project, the artist aimed to convey a positive message by using red safety warning cones and flags featuring a house structure, symbolizing a construction site for gap housing, one of the policy recommendations for future developments in the villages. White house structures were also outlined in chalk on the grass. A local leader from the Kylemore Development Forum invited the project team along with geography, drama and visual art students to attend a meeting with them in Kylemore.
to do my animation relating to the game of Monopoly, which I'm sure everyone knows. It's a game about capitalism, about buying the most properties, having the most money, and coming out on top, which is a strong metaphor that attaches itself to the town of Pniel, where the locals are being pushed out of their own homes and losing their history. As a
postgrad urban geography student. Me and my classmates were tasked to explore the threat of gentrification in Raithby. As a part of our project, we conducted numerous interviews with with Raithby residents as well as residents of the new estates that are being formed in Raithby, the new security estates being formed in Raithby. So one of these interviews with one of the inkomers in the security estate was very interesting. She did a lot of research on different places to stay depending on the cultural heritage of a place, the community ties. She wanted a place that had a strong culture and strong community ties. So she decided on Raithby, so she moved there. She started to mention that the local rugby stadium, which is located right outside of her security estate, makes a lot of noise on the weekend, and to the point where she has laid noise complaints. However, the rugby in Raithby is historical. They've been playing rugby for generations in Raithby. She has not supported the rugby herself in person. Instead, she just decides to stay bubbled up in her state and not support the rugby, and instead lay noise complaints. The community is not pushing away the incomers, but it seems like the incomers are pushing away the community.
Last term, I did a project on animation about Jamestown. In the project, we had to look at Jamestown as a whole, but also the past of Jamestown and how over the years, gentrification has affected Jamestown in different ways. And one thing that really stood out for me was the older Jamestonians who sort of reminisced about the old Jamestown and the Jamestown with strawberry fields and swimming in the river and all those sorts of things. So I wanted to capture that, but also the instability of the recent years with lots of inkomers coming in and forcing them to move out of their house.
Gentrification. Gentrification. Gentrification.
And we have hit the jackpot. Your prize is a performance or a protest.
Ons voel uitgesluit in ons eie dorp.
Ja, ontwikkeling.
Ons kom en gooi wees rond. As inwoners van Kylemore, vra ons, wat is gentrification? Ons werke stimuleer ons werke nie. Access denied. Met beloftes aan meer toerisme. Meer werksgeleenthede. En meer huise.
Ryk ontwikkelaars self ten koste van die Kylemore gemeenskap.
I feel anger at the attempt of others to come into Kylemore and to change things within our community.
I feel frustrated they're not benefiting us.
Ons develop our community, but for their own plans and agendas. What is development?
Advertentieprojek.
Maar ons berg is nie meer ons berg nie. Is dit? Daar is nie meer enkele lenteblom in sig. Die beloftes is nie vir ons.
Ons het so baie vrae en ons kry geen antwoorde nie. Wat gaan vir wat?
Wie help vir wie? Is die ontwikkeling vir ons of vir u?
Of word ons net vir 'n kop gevat? Ons berg is nie meer ons berg nie. En die lenteblomme is uit sig.
En mense praat van inkommers, want die inkommers wil nie groet nie. Jamestowners wil veel groet, maar die inkommers wil nie groet nie. Hulle ken nie die kultuur nie. Hulle wil hier wees, maar hulle wil sekere goed hê, maar ander goed nie hê nie. Jamestown het nie mure gehad nie. Jy kon loop deur die erwe na mense toe. Hoe trek ons hierdie nuwe mense in en maak hulle deel van ons community, in plaas van dat hulle vir ons sê hoe hulle die community wil hê?
So yes, ek dink van die begin af het ons besluit, ons gaan definitief nie hier in move en dan gaan ons 'n helse muur ombou, want ons is nou bang, nee, en niks kontak maak met whoever nie. Ons het van die begin af geweet, if we move in here, we need to be part of the community. Ek dink jy moet kom met die regte, jy moet weet jy's 'n inkomer en jy moet weet, it's not necessarily your place, you need to own your time amper hierso, of you own your place hierso, jy weet.
We are 3,000 people in this town, 3,000. 2,991 belong to this church. We see everybody every day. We have function on Monday, it's the church choir. On Tuesday, it's the boys brigade. On Wednesday, it's the girls brigade. On Thursday, it's the Pniel and the seniors coming together. On Friday, it's the youth. On Saturday, we go to the rugby. On Sunday, we have 2 church services here. We have like 10 households here in Pniel, white households. They carry the children. Don't play here in the street. That's our culture. That's how we play cricket. How do we play rugby, and we walk and we stand under the lamp. We didn't have electricity, and we have our fire outside, and we talk what happened with the rugby and whatever. You can't do that anymore. Your dog that barks. Law enforcement, dog is barking the whole day. That's changing our culture. Now when we walk past,
where we had to grapple with the interdisciplinary nature of change making through social impact. And I think it's absolutely fantastic that in this example, we bring together geography, visual arts, of course, photography, drama, the artists, the University Museum, Ulrich in particular, and then Stellenbosch, and of course the communities of Pniel, Raithby, Kylemore, Jamestown, and others. And then I think something of the project reminds us that we should not over-romanticize what was, because part of the fabric of what is around is invested in something of the historic apartheid infrastructure of the time. Although that is the case, one should never underestimate the realities of the stories that, in spite of, developed and evolved to make sense of who we are as communities, as peoples, and what we can be, where, of course, as you know, a changing community impacts directly on sense-making of place, identity, story, history, language, etc. And I do think something in this project will also help us there. The exhibition, the work, the influence, the learning, the unlearning, the sharing, the making sense of, and the realizing of what is possible comes together, I think, in a fascinating way in what we will see upstairs and what we will experience through the students later. And when we drive through the Pniels, the Raithbys, the Kylemores, and as we drive up to the farms on the other side of Ida's Valley, etc., we should be reminded of not only the what was, but also what is possible, and even more sadly, what could be lost if we don't act and in a real way make sense of what happens in our town and in communities right around South Africa. Thank you for that reminder, and I'm very happy that we can be here today. Baie dankie daarvoor.
Die beloftes as die verkoos.
Ons het so baie vrae. En ons kry geen antwoorde nie. Wat gaan vir wat?
4 oor 4 is die ontwikkeling vir ons of vir u.
Ons berg is nie ons berg nie. En die lenteblomme is uit sig.
By Heritage Month in September 2022, all 4 villages were well aware of the impacts of gentrification, leading to the formation of a formal coalition among key stakeholders from each village. This effort culminated in a roundtable discussion held at the Stellenbosch Museum, marking a historic occasion as it was the first time representatives from these communities had come together around the same table.
By ons groot bekommernis soos ons nou gesprekke gehad het ek in die hele paar spanne. Brouwklip in so 'n ontwikkeling gaan nou begin. Mountain View se ontwikkeling gaan binnekort begin. James ook.
Op die oomblik word ons erfenis benader. En dit is met ontwikkelinge wat rondom ons leefruimte opgaan. Waar ons geen insig het. Wat ek voel, dit is minagting teenoor die gemeenskap. So, met dit, toe die Hamlet opgaan, toe ons die gesprek gehad het ek vir hulle gevra, gaan dit ons belasting beïnvloed? Enigszins, en dit was vir ons gesê, nee. En bracht die daar. Oor 'n paar nou heiliglik kom klaar ons mense van hoe hoog hulle belasting is. As jy al hierdie goedjies binne in ag neem, dan gaan die rooi ligte vir Raithby regtig aan. En dit is 'n rede tot kommer vir wat nou eintlik aangaan, omdat ons oningelig is. Ons weet van goed, maar dit kom nie na ons toe nie. En ek voel dit is nie reg. Wat dit teenoor ons gemeenskap doen nie. Dit was ook vir ons gesê dat daar 'n persentasie van elke huis wat eintlik opgaan, gaan vir ons gegee word, sodat dit binne in 'n fonds ingesit gaan word, sodat dit ons kinders se education kan bevorder. Tot nou toe is daar nog geen geld van enige ontwikkeling aan ons gegee.
Van dit staan as die boodskap. En die mense het opgestaan. En hulle het vir Ellen Windy laat kom. Jy weet, so ek dink ons moet begin ook om vennootskappe met die mense. Ons kan leer van hulle. Dat ons praat met mense soos in Jamestown wat dieselfde ervarings gehad het. In feite, hulle het nou al 'n ondervinding opgedoen hoe om die goed aan te spreek en hoe om te engage met die verskillende. Ons is nog nie daar nie, maar regtig ons moet nie wag tot sekere studies afgehandel is. Ons moet nou ons prioriteit is om 'n vergadering met Stellenbosch munisipaliteit te sit. Want hulle is die mense, as ons wag vir die goed, soos Ronnie gesê het, intussen keer hulle goed, jy weet, aansoeke goed.
Out of the deep concern that is born because of what's happening with gentrification around us at the moment. And we will ask our local ward councillor, Councillor Adams, just to come forward and please receive a memorandum to be handed over to the municipality.
And if you can look around Professor Marcella, we are standing here because of the effect of gentrification, the effect that it might have on our communities, right? And we also want to urge you, we spoke to you for a few minutes, to really support us in this fight against social injustice. Get up from the farms, coming down that grade.
In 2022, the Stellenbosch Museum opened a permanent exhibition showcasing the histories of the 4 villages. We believe that if the process of gentrification is not managed through effective policy soon, these villages may already have found their final resting place in the museum.
En dit is nou net oorgelaat om die burgemeester te oortuig van wat potensieel gedoen kan word om die gemeenskap en die erfenis van hierdie wonderlike historiese dorpies bewaar te kan behou.
Any place where you think babies is compromised, please let me know.
The Mayor of Stellenbosch publicly expressed a deep concern for protecting the heritage of places and communities. However, upon reviewing all the important municipal policy and bylaw documents, we found no references to gentrification. It was thus also important for us to make the municipality's leadership aware of gentrification and its impacts on communities. With the help of geography students working on the project, we finalized a policy guideline document and submitted it to the Mayor in August 2024. This document included 15 policy recommendations on how the municipality could manage gentrification. Some of these included inclusionary zoning and housing schemes, tax incentives, community land trusts, community benefits agreements, and so on.
The first policy recommendation for the municipality is likely the most obvious one. They should acknowledge that gentrification is a real process, that it exists and impacts certain areas and communities within the Stellenbosch municipal area.
In these towns that we often find communities that have been living there for ages. They haven't moved, they live there, they make a living there. It's important that we consider the well-being of these people. And when we talk about issues such as gentrification in medium-sized cities, for example, it is important that we question to what extent gentrification has an impact on the protection of the well-being and the sense of place of these communities.
Moontlikheid is dat die munisipaliteite die wette moet herskryf en sê dat die mense wat hier gebore getoe is, al die tyd grond gehad het, se belasting gaan op 'n sekere vlak bly. Ons stuur ons mense ouer huise toe nie. Ons mense, my tannie van 101 bly nog in 'n eie huis. So ons versorg haar. Maar iemand gaan die belasting moet betaal. Sy kry 'n pensioen. So hoe En hier's verskriklik baie ou mense. Baie mense voel en ek voel ook so dat hier's baie van ons kinders wat graag hier wil bly, maar wat nou nie dan die grond kan bekostig nie. En dan die ander negatief is ons belasting gaan op. Hulle voorsien nie dat die mense wat hier is, het meestal self gebou. Ons het ons grond al verniet gekry, ons self gebou. So jy kan nie regtig daai belasting bekostig nie. En sê byvoorbeeld my ma, sy het grond geërf. Sy kan nooit die hoë belasting bekostig nie. So ek dink wat in die toekoms kan gebeur is dat sommige mense moet 'n ander verblyf soek wat goedkoper is. Hulle sal hulle plekke moet verkoop. En ek dink dis waarteen ons moet waak en voor moet baklei.
Uit daardie prosesse moet jy dan ook 'n proses begin wat engage met die munisipaliteit te sê, luister, wat 'n mitigation gaan julle in plek sit om ons toekoms te verseker teen gentrification, teen unfair increases van valuation. Maar nou, die waardasie in my opinie, verhogings, die methodology wat hulle gebruik, is nie fair nie.
Through the work, I think we're inspired and I hope convicted to do more. We need stronger advocacy on this topic. Ronnie mentioned the conversations with the municipality, also linked to law changes, regulation changes. We need to ensure that something of what we don't want to see becomes true in what we see. And therefore we need continuous advocacy and a stronger role. Then, Ronnie, I think you and colleagues must help us as a university community, the broader university community, to practice what we preach, or rather, that we practice what we learn. And that we acknowledge something of the influence of the university community as a citizen of the town in affecting and hopefully positively impacting, given our role, mandate and positioning in this town.
Ek buite ry man. Maar nou vra jy vir jouself, hoe gaan jy dit stop? Jy kan dit net stop as jy die mense wat wette maak in die parlement, want dit moet daar begin.
It excites me a lot to think that after 1996, with the adoption of our constitution, municipalities all over South Africa have a lot more authority and power than what they used to have. We have a three-sphered government, and local government has vastly more authority and power and functions than what they used to have in the previous dispensation. With this transformation of the powers of local government, we received a legal framework that explicitly provides for many instruments that municipalities can use to effect positive change and to see to the transformation of things such as local economic development, the protection of different rights, improvement of people's lives generally. So the instruments that us as lawyers often think about first, obviously, are municipal bylaws. We think of law to regulate affairs, for example, something such as gentrification. However, there's a lot to be said for other instruments at the disposal of municipalities, especially if we think about spatial development plans, urban development frameworks, spatial development frameworks, the IDP, the Integrated Development Plan, or even instruments such as public participation, because that is an instrument in and by itself. So I'm always up for encouraging people to look beyond bylaws only when we talk about instruments for regulatory change and long-lasting change at that.
An important policy recommendation involves implementing zoning mechanisms to create an intangible heritage or gentrification protection overlay zone in the villages. Managed through existing planning instruments such as the Spatial Development Framework, the Municipal Land Use Planning Bylaw, and the Zoning Scheme Bylaw. These overlay zones would include restrictions prohibiting the consolidation of urban. This measure aims to curb the practice of developers buying multiple properties within a street block, consolidating them, demolishing the houses and constructing gated developments.
So hy is wat? Dan gaan die tribunal toe, dan sit die almal is wat daar. Dan vra jy jouself, hoe kan hierdie mense met hulle agtergrond sensitief is teenoor 'n saak wat vir ons bedreig rondom ons eiendom of 'n livelihood? Hulle gaan nie. Want mense maak ook nie gebruik van hy proses om na die tribunal toe te gaan nie. Die munisipaliteit of die raad sien ook niks fout met die lack of transformation rondom die tribunal waar daar na die ratio gekyk word en miskien mense wat meer sensitief gaan wees. Nou, hoekom is dit irrelevant dan vir die raad of vir die munisipaliteit? Dit beteken, hulle is rechtstreeks verantwoordelik vir ons probleem. Dis 'n bedreiging vir die voortsetting van ons livelihood, ons swaar verdiende eiendom.
So at the end of the day, what you really need to do in places like Jamestown, Pniel and Kylemore is to capitalize on any desire, however small, from either side of the inkomers or the people who are already in the town. You have to capitalize on any sort of wish to integrate spaces and so forth, so that a space can be created where bridges are being built instead of walls. And so ultimately these changes can be sustainable and at the same time conserving important histories and traditions.
Jy het iets nodig wat op 'n meer makro vlak is, waar die developer sê maar I get it, I'm becoming part of your world. I'm impacting your world. This is how we can make it better. That's not the thinking.
They have a lot to say about gentrification, and they also know they have a lot to learn, which is fantastic, and we get to learn also a lot from them, their perspectives and all of that. So yeah.
Very nice, man. Do you think the message went well to them and they understood clearly everything that you were trying to elaborate to them about gentrification?
I think their understanding of gentrification has grown a lot. There was a lot of questions they had for us, which we were happy to explain, because obviously we did a lot of research. They have a bigger view or understanding of gentrification, but for us it's important that they don't have to speak academically about it. They need to speak about it in their feelings and in their personal experiences, because that's at the end of the day what we're dealing with and doing. It's storytelling of then the specific topic.
So deel van hierdie interaktiewe kreatiewe proses lei dan daartoe dat ons inligting uitruil. En saam met hierdie inligting uitruil is dit eintlik die ontdekking van inligting wat dan vanselfsprekend en die bewusmaking vergroot met almal wat betrokke is daarbey. Ons almal leer, ons almal ruil inligting uit. En wat ons ook agtergekom het met hierdie proses is dit kring uit. Ons begin by mense wat dan weer met ander mense praat en hulle weer nooi na die kreatiewe proses toe. En so word bewusmaking groei en kring uit vir almal betrokke.
En hierdie tipe televisie berichte, sosiale bewusmaking gaan dit wel kan regkry.
We must stop talking about socio-spatial processes of social injustice like gentrification. Now is the time to act.
There is a house built out of stone, wooden floors, walls and window sills, tables and chairs warmed by all of the dust. This is a place where I don't feel this is a place where I feel